still on the rise, and there's mobile devices. Obviously, they introduce new security risks. These are the top 10 for this year, and it's the usual social engineering, third-party exposure, which is interesting because some of these, of course, refer to what happened a few days ago, like with Uber. And again, it was another example of failure regarding the hard coding of passwords inside a PowerShell script, which was really very disappointing indeed. There's the cloud vulnerabilities, there's ransomware, there's the poor data management, which again has been highlighted a few days ago, and there's inadequate post-attack procedures, and all of these really have come to light again in this past week. Interestingly, last year there was an increase in about 50% over year in the cyber attacks. There were certain areas which were hit hardest. That was education, your research, and healthcare. And what's happening is that a lot of these attackers are finding more and more ways to get into these systems, and the healthcare sector, particularly in Saudi, is very vulnerable. And we have seen significant issues here, but however, the government is, in fact, now deciding to take aim at this and to do a framework for the health sector and with the education sector, which is done with the financial sector here. This is an interesting one as well. Supply chain attacks are on the rise, and it is an area, again, which is vulnerable. Obviously, they started late 2020, and they continued through last year, and they're still continuing this year. The discovery of the SolarWinds hack led this trend. And again, we had another attack, which was the Kaiser attack, because this was managed service providers. And again, one of the explanations is there. Interestingly, here inside Saudi, we've had, there was one issue with a provider and with an insurance provider and an MSSP, where the insurance organisation was infected by malware. And it was an issue between the MSSP and the security provider. SAMA, who is the central bank, of course, here, were called in, and the regulator obviously launched an immediate investigation and found that the malware had got in through the provider because they were looking after the SIM solution and their SOC. The CISO of the insurance company said it was nothing to do with us, it's their fault. Well, SAMA rejected that outright and stated, no, as the CISO, it is you and your responsibility to protect the organisation, irrespective of if the MSSP has got infected. And there was a big debate whether the license should continue for the organisation. So there's one example of that. Also, we had and coming back to the slides here, we had last year we had the Log4j attempt. Again, within over 800,000 attempts in the first 3 days. These actors are certainly getting more and more sophisticated, and it's certainly a situation with the supply chain. And again, this has happened a few days ago with Uber, of course. Regarding now this one, the cyber pandemic, for all the bluster that COVID is over, no, it is not over COVID, and it's increasing again with different variants. But in terms of the cyber part of it, there are a significant number of people who have not returned to work, and in the UK, they're simply not returning to work. And you may have seen the reports in the government in the UK newspapers about this. There are obviously working from home. It does increase the vulnerability, the significant vulnerability of the organisation, because I've seen far too many instances when the machines which are given to employees are taken home and they haven't removed the admin rights, so they're installing anything, whether it be tripwire or any old, not tripwire, any BitTorrent applications, etc. And to be quite blunt, again, stated in the slide, there's been very little has changed, and companies are still supporting mostly or like wholly remote workforces. And of course, this is now accelerate the cloud adoption, because it's cheaper to have cloud solutions than it is on premise. The saving grace in Saudi Arabia is, and particularly in the financial sector, is that SAMA NCA, or SAM particularly, refuse point blank to have any solution which is cloud based, which is outside the kingdom. Obviously, you can have it inside the kingdom with a cloud provider, but they will not accept, and they will give no exceptions to any provider which is outside of the outside of Saudi Arabia. And again, this comes down to organisations who are struggling to protect the systems, because having these remote workers, it does add another in fact, gaping hole to allow anybody into their systems. Now, this situation will not go away, and it will not disappear, and it will continue into next year and the year after, because since COVID there has been a whole strategic change of working like from home now. It's far easier. So I expect this to continue in the years to come. Cloud services, obviously, as I said, are a primary target. And then last year, the open management infrastructure vulnerability, which caused a huge problem with Microsoft Azure VMs. And it was discovered. But obviously, there were things in place to prevent it from spreading. But again, it's another example of Microsoft's disastrous failure for security. And again, for all their bravado and all their saber rattling, oh yes, we've got a handle on this, they're still making the same mistakes, because again, the developers are simply not understanding the situation. And again, when source code is being leaked, for example, with Active Directory, when it was leaked as part of the Windows 2003, like it leaked last year in 2020, you could see the state of the code, and the code hasn't got any better at all. And that's why I think it's shameful, like for Microsoft to say, "Oh yes, we're on this case now and we're fixing it." No, they're not. And you've seen examples of this. And let's be honest, the word Microsoft and security do not go in the same sentence. It's a trick by Microsoft. It's a marketing trick. Yes, we're all over. Yes, we're fixing it. And in fact, they aren't. Obviously, there was another issue in Google's compute engine, which was offering as an infrastructure as a service, and that could have allowed complete takeover of all the hosted VMs. However, this was actually spotted and it was corrected. But the increase in the cloud services will accelerate even faster now, especially in Saudi as well, where we've got Amazon, we've got Oracle, and Microsoft haven't yet to come here. They're situated still like in Dubai. But this will accelerate. And within 5 years, it'll be a whole different landscape. Of course, it will very much depend on whether SAMA or NCA here determine that they will allow a lot of these cloud services to be hosted outside the kingdom. That is yet to be resolved, but we shall see about that. Ransomware, which I particularly find is the worst of all of them. It's to me, it's outright like theft and dishonesty, because yes, apart from attacking the banks and the Aramcos and other huge organisations or pipelines, it also impacts the end user when some little old lady at home is working on an Excel spreadsheet or something, accidentally goes to a site which hasn't been protected for whatever reason in terms of the internet. She then gets ransomware onto her machine. And then these groups then encrypt the data and then demand payment to decrypt it. To me, this is the worst of them all, and to me, there's not enough being done about this. Yes, there's solutions out there, like Sophos, etc., all fantastic, but they are deliberately targeting as well as the big players. And to me, schools, and you've seen school closures, healthcare, and again, there was a story just last week about this ransomware attack in America, yet again. And the issue is people have to pay up because they've got no other option. Now, to me, this is where the investment has to be made on this, and the crackdown has to be very ferocious indeed for this. Another issue, mobile devices bringing again another level of security risk. And yes, again, we're here within the fintech side of Saudi Arabia. We have the BYOD policy part, SAMA, and we also have NCA. But again, I've seen so many of these applications where the coding is so weak and insecure that it's just letting all sorts in. And if you go to the Google Store, the Apple Store, whatever, and you look at these, and you download some of these applications, my goodness me, it doesn't take an Albert Einstein to work out they're completely vulnerable. And again, you've got the malware Trojans. You've got Flytrap. You've got the Masterthread malware, and of course these take advantage of the social media because they gain access and they harvest information. And again, they're getting very clever at this as well because, again, real life example of and a colleague of mine in a financial institution here was affected by this, where this individual was on Facebook, was actually using a mobile for this, and had an interest in something, and they were harvesting the data, and they were profiling this individual and said, "Oh, this is interesting. He wants this," so they sort of they targeted him, and said, "Oh, if you," and they did an advert for an email, which looked very convincing, and said, "Oh, if you, this item is only $30, when in fact in reality it should be over $2,000." He, of course, saw this. Oh, fantastic. He sent his account details, clicked on submit, and they emptied his bank account. Now, that did happen. Now, fortunately, the bank ensured that he didn't lose all of his money. But again, this happens, and they're getting very clever at this. And if you look at the emails, they all look very sophisticated, and they're raising their game. And these phishing emails are very clever indeed. So again, these mobile devices, which are numerous, they are vulnerable. And again, I've always told when I've done awareness sessions here that you don't, for example, it's free Wi-Fi. If it's free, it's too good to be true. You don't get anything free in this world. So what you do is, you have to make sure that what you're connecting to is legitimate. And again, people have taken note of that. Yes, some providers in Kingdom, in certain parts of Riyadh, where I am, they do give free Wi-Fi. That's usually the STC, etc. But again, you have to be very, very careful because if it's free, well, there's something else behind it. Opportunities. Well, it's not all, like I said in the headline. It isn't all doom and gloom. The threats are varied. There are multiple. Technology is constantly changing with new ideas, new products, and ways of living. And of course, these opportunities do provide new economic opportunities, in particular with cybersecurity, employment opportunities. So there are ways to make a difference. For example, here, this slide here showed the estimated global spending on cybersecurity up to the end of next year. And as you can see, it is escalating faster and faster. Now, on this current trajectory, by 2030, it'll be well over $1 trillion, in fact, dollars. I mean, who would you? Because imagine that 10 years ago, even 15 years ago, $1,000 billion in cybersecurity. However, it's spent, but again, as you've seen this in this past week with a certain company, disastrous failure because although the systems are there in place, analysing, detecting, you have the human element which has allowed an 18-year-old complete and utter free reign into their systems and hard coding. I mean, that is unforgivable. Now, you could say, well, the system didn't detect that. Well, okay. But if these systems are deliberately configured not to look at this, then you have the internal threat as well. So no matter how much you spend, you could spend 10, if a trillion on this. But if the systems are designed or configured in a way by individuals who don't know what they're doing, which is also a common issue, then you will find quickly that these can be compromised. Um, the economy, in terms of this slide, it is all about like data, and it is king. And again, here there's been a huge drive in Saudi Arabia by the to have like a data framework as well to ensure that the data is credible and not just a load of all hiccup. Because here, obviously, we use like national IDs, Ikama IDs, and for like non-Saudis, this system's in place not just here but other parts of the world. And again, the data, which particularly the financial sector, again, having worked in there for 5 years here, it's atrocious. And you have loans which people have no ICAMA or national ID, no name has been entered. So obviously, when it comes to this data analysis and data checking, it's just garbage. And so now there's been a real effort on the Saudi government to now tighten up this. And again, it's starting to have some effect. Um, so again, the data part of it, interacting with cybersecurity and artificial intelligence and machine learning, which is another huge area, will certainly enhance the offering. Um, the projected market size by 2021 to 2028, as you can see, it's ever increasing. And again, from 2016 to where the next 12 years from there, it's a huge, significant increase. Professional services versus managed services. Professional services will ever increase. The managed services are increasing, but not at the same rate. Um, it could be the fact that it's a cost issue there, because obviously these managed services, there's always a significant cost involved. This is a big one here, and particularly in Saudi Arabia. There's growth in cybersecurity since 2013, and as you can see, automation, gigantic, almost 355% has increased. Now the risk is is increasing. Um, the risk jobs are up to by 133%. Compliance, interesting enough, is only up by 47%, which I thought was quite odd. And the overall increase is 94%. Now it's not a case of yes, you have like a gap there, a huge gap in North America and the world, and those numbers are increasing by the day. But this is where the issue comes. It's all well and good filling these jobs with people. If they haven't the skills, it doesn't count for anything. And I've seen so many of these over the years here, where you get these CISOs who simply haven't got the experience. And they're in these positions, and consultants have to come in and sort out the issues. It's got to be skilled people, individuals. Technology talents. Well, that means collaboration of the government, and particularly from the government, where you have to have research and development, and they have to be at the driving force. Yes, it's not like a socialist utopia where the government can do everything. I'm not even suggesting that. But if the government leads by example, and it says, right, the government sector will go down this route, then everybody else will follow. Usually is the case. But I'm not saying that it should be like a communist utopia where the state does everything and the state will tell you what to do. But data, information, systems. You've seen the disaster last week, like with Uber. Um, it's a constant and it's like a battle. Um, Also, you have the diversity issue as well, because especially in Saudi Arabia, we've noticed there's a lot of women who are very good at cybersecurity, who've gone to the relevant university courses, but they're way underestimated in this sector. However, it's an ever-growing population, and that's my presentation. Thank you for listening.